Hello and welcome to episode number 20 of the Cheesesteaks and Controllers podcast, presented by Fox PHL The Gambler, 1025 FM, 1480 AM Philadelphia, and iHeart Radio. I am the Esports and Gaming Insider, Jason Fanelli, and we are at episode number 20. I can't believe it, hitting milestones every single week, and I am so happy to be here tonight talking to you about the biggest and brightest things in the world of video games and esports. Philly-themed show tonight. We are really living up to the cheesesteaks part of the Cheesesteaks and Controller name with two interviews featuring local video game-related talent. We have a professional fighting game player, also a coach over at Nerd Street Games for their camps, a teacher at their camps, as well as a local video game musician who has composed some original content and remixed some content for other albums. I actually brought him on to talk about Extra Life, but hey, he does the music too. Let's talk about that. So, let's not waste any more time and get right into the 6 in 60 seconds. The Philadelphia Fusion have signed a brand new head coach in 9K, the former general manager of the Paris Eternal and part of the championship San Francisco Shock's coaching tree. Elsewhere, the League of Legends Worlds 2020 finals are set, with the Chinese team Suning taking on the Korean team Damwon Gaming this Saturday morning at 6 a.m. local time. Also, 343 Industries studio head Chris Lee has departed the company following the most recent delay of Halo Infinite. Two major games coming out soon were delayed. First, Destruction All-Stars was delayed to February as a PS Plus game, and Cyberpunk 2077 was delayed again, now December 10th. The Netherlands has ruled that player packs in FIFA 21's Ultimate Team violate the country's Betting and Gaming Act. EA is expected to appeal. And finally, World of Warcraft Shadowlands is now releasing November 23rd after a delay earlier this year. Those were your 6 in a little over 60 seconds. Yes, folks, those were your 6 in 60 seconds for the week. Two big delays in Destruction All-Stars, a PS5 launch title, now going to become part of PS Plus in February, and Cyberpunk 2077 get a 3-week delay going from November 19th to December 10th. I don't know what the heck is going on with that game, but I hope they figure it out soon. But enough about all that. This is a Philly-themed show. We are talking to two Philly area players today, and the first one I'm really excited to talk about because we're going to talk about some fighting games. I love talking about fighting games. I met this guy at, I think it was Winter Brawl 2018 down at the Clarion in Essington, a big fighting game tournament there, and we've been keeping up ever since. We're going to talk to us a little bit about the fighting game community and where they are. His name is Jumaani Haskins, but if you're playing against him, he is Maestro. Maestro, sir, how are you today?
Great. Thank you so much for having me on. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Happy to talk to you in this fine Halloween week. First things first, esports really came into its own in this pandemic because, we can't go outside, so we're going to stay inside and play games and watch sports or esports. But the fighting game community seemed to not share in that thriving. It was really just a matter of developers being caught with their pants down as far as the online capabilities are concerned. Would you find any other reasons for that to be the case, or is it mostly just because the online sucks?
I think it's a combination of factors. The online definitely being a big thing. I remember, going through the process of writing my thesis and doing all this and writing about the FGC as this, kind of cultural entity, this culture, as well as being a gaming community. The thing that sets it apart, that makes it, so different from the rest of the other esports is that for the longest time, from when things started in the arcade, our primary method of play, our most authentic method of play, our kind of apex, I guess you could say, has always been, offline, face-to-face competition.
That's correct.
Playing head-to-head right there where you have people in front of you or right next to you. Obviously, during a pandemic, we can't do that. So I think because that was our focus for so long, the very thing that kind of put us at at, the top of our game kind of put us at the bottom of the game.
Sure.
When you think about it,
Yep.
compared to everybody else. They've got these, they've got the servers, they've got the infrastructure. They're set up to be able to handle, massive player bases online. In most tournaments, for games like Counter-Strike or online, League of Legends, Overwatch, you can do online tournaments as well as LAN tournaments, and you'll still have a similar experience, minus the ping. But you can still replicate those. With fighting games, it's so much harder to do that.
I agree. There's really nothing like having your opponent next to you as opposed to talking trash to you over a microphone. It's just not the same. It is not the same. But it doesn't help that they don't put the technology into it either. It seems like there's a reluctance almost from fighting game developers, particularly the Japanese fighting game developers, your Street Fighters, your Guilty Gears and such, to adopt a thriving online netcode. Do you think there's a reason for that, or is it just they don't want to put the time into it because they know that the best, most optimal play is side by side?
So they know that the most optimal play is side by side, right? But I think another thing is that Japanese game studios and Japanese game developers, traditionally the market there has been so competitive just within Japan.
Sure.
It is very difficult to get these long-standing companies, your ArcSys, your Capcoms, your SNKs. It's very difficult to get them to develop something that hasn't been developed by them, to use something that's not proprietary. So if we have something like, GGPO, everybody talks about that being the infrastructure, for what we know is rollback netcode. And what that's done for old games. New games have adopted it and have used it. It's difficult, it's a hard sell. We talk about how great it is for us to be able to do that and be able to play with people and still have a great online experience. For them, it's just like, yeah, but we didn't make it. For them, it seems like using a competitor's product in their product.
Interesting. So it's almost like a pride thing.
There's a lot of pride. There are some things I may be wrong about, but there's pride in face. This concept of saving face. It's very prevalent in Japanese culture, specifically the business culture. So something that that wasn't even developed by their company, much less developed in the West, developed by a Western studio to be used. We talk about like general conveniences and inventions. Yeah, that's fine and dandy. But when it comes to making the game itself and making it better, like why would we put something in here that we didn't make? There's kind of always that pushback about it.
I get that. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It just it sucks. It's not great because you don't want them to have that prideful stance. You would much prefer them to make a game that everybody can play. But I definitely can see where you're coming from there.
It's also a case of they don't have to deal with the same things that we do. Japan kind of definitely fits within the U.S. It fits within California, if I remember the math correctly.
That sounds right.
They don't have the same issues that we do in terms of internet infrastructure, and it's very easy for people to forget just like how large the U.S. is if you've never been here, how large our states actually are. I've been one of the people who have been advocating for better netcode, better online experiences overall, just because people who play fighting games, everybody plays fighting games.
That's right.
There's not always going to be that person you run into that has a scene. Every online warrior you meet, they might only have, online play. That might have been, how they got their start, but that's kind of all they have. So I feel like as many people should be able to have a good experience as possible. Obviously, you can't please everyone, but I think, everybody should be able to play close to optimally if they can. What about the guy who lives in, what we consider the flyover states? He doesn't have a local scene, or if he does have a local, it's a 2 to 3 hour drive away from him.
Yeah, that's true. And that is really a shame. I feel like that's where the most of the growth is. But you could say that about the internet structure in America, like in general. That's where the opportunity is. So I think that's more of a far-reaching issue. It's not to say that fighting game companies are not without fault, as we mentioned. There's a lot of pride there. But as far as the internet like infrastructure part, that's not something they can necessarily control. But speaking of the people who play the fighting games, another big part, the big news that fighting games did make in the pandemic, unfortunately, was not great. A lot of people and a lot of different scenes came out. It came out that they were, for lack of a better term, creeps. The most high profile of which I would say, unless I'm forgetting someone, is Joey Cuellar, the head of Evo at the time. As a player, you have attended more tournaments than I have, most likely, because you've been playing for a long time. I have been playing fighting games, but I haven't really competed. I've been more of a media, just a viewer. Was it just a matter of time before these things came to light?
I think so, and not necessarily in the sense that it was only a matter of time before people got found out for like whatever it is they were doing. I think the climate is totally changing. People are more comfortable, speaking up about the experiences they've had,
Yep.
within the community, whether it was, recently or prior to. And everybody, talks about, the issues surrounding, cancel culture and all this. But I'm like, yo, like if people are doing wrong, call out wrong where it is. Do not let this go on. Like,
That's
don't
right.
let people who are guilty of abuses and doing harm to community members. These people shouldn't have positions of power or influences within the community. I feel that if we are going to grow as a community, we need to look out for the community, and that includes holding these people accountable. There was a lot of stuff that I didn't know about. There's things that people had told me, or I'm reading through Twit longers and all this stuff, and I'm like, wait, what?
That's right.
And then when they're naming some of the names, I'm like, bro, like these are people I hung out with, that I chilled with, that ran the tournaments, that ran the events, that I saw like day in day out. These are people I consider friends. They're friends that for me it was hard. A lot of the stuff was difficult because a lot of it turned out to be like, wow, like another friend had harmed another friend of mine, and I think that was what hurt the worst.
Oof. See, that you answered my next question before I could even ask it. Were you personally affected by any of it? But to have a friend do that to another friend, I can't imagine what you were feeling with. Man, I'm sorry it happened. I'm sorry it happened to the friend. I'm not sorry for the friend that did it. That guy can go, piss off. And I'm sorry that you had to deal with that. It never should have happened. And I'm glad that the culture is changing. Like I got two little girls. One of them's really into video games. One of these days, I'd like to bring her to something like this, just to see how she would like it. And if we can, sweep the crap out now and make it a little safer for everybody, as it should be, I'm all about it. Which reminds me, here in Philly, whose name you didn't hear among all those creeps? Eric Small, Big E, because he is not a creep. He is one of the best in the business. Shout out to Big E if you're listening to this. Love your tournaments. Love your stuff, man.
Yeah, big fan of him. Big E was one of the guys I started talking to when I was getting into going to tournaments. He actually came to a local anime tournament that was going on, and he came through and told us about Summer Jam. That's actually how I ended up going to my first major.
Yeah, that's cool.
Much love and big shouts to Eric.
Yeah, he is great. I like him a lot. One of these days, I'm going to get him and Emily on. We're going to talk about the future of Big E gaming once this whole pandemic thing is done. In fact, nice segue into my next question. In your mind, describe to me, considering how the pandemic has affected the fighting games, how fighting games play right now, the reckoning that we talked about. What does an FGC event look like to you, both at the local level and at a national EVO level or Combo Breaker or any of those tournaments? Will they be relatively similar, just maybe with more people, keeping an eye out for creepy behavior, or do you see more of a fundamental change in how things are run?
I see a fundamental change in how things are run, as well as, people looking out for each other and calling out creepy behavior when it happens. A lot more people saying, yo, that's not right. Like, if you're going to do something like that, don't do it at all, especially don't do it here
That's right.
amongst our people. I think the issue right now is that there's so many unknowns, but if I had to pick something to really say, like, here's what, an FGC event looks like in 2021 and forward, I think it's definitely going to be a lot smaller. There's going to be a difference in how these are going to be run. Until, there's, a viable vaccine that's out there for everybody to, have access to.
That's fair.
It's going to come down to just, being smart about our decisions, being safe. I'm expecting, mask usage and social distancing. I'm honestly expecting this until 2022.
Sure, yeah,
to
me
be
too.
Completely honest with you.
I think some people won't even ever stop. They'll just do it for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, I think it's just, it's something that for now we have to live with as long as we, listen to the science and, adhere to that science and adhere to guidelines, we can beat it. But I think it's going to be smaller. I don't think we'll be seeing as much of a melting pot as we normally saw with fighting game events. And I mean that in the sense of because of the way the world is right now. I don't think that an event like a Combo Breaker is going to have the same international presence, and EVO is not going to have the same international presence. This whole idea of the Super Bowl of fighting games, I think they still exist, but I don't think this will be, somebody's going to come from Japan or, South Korea or Thailand. They're going to come and play at, NorCal Regionals, or we're going to have, the Pakistani FGC, show up at Combo Breaker. These are things that I would love to happen, but,
right.
Where the whole game has changed. Nothing is going to be the same as we've known it. The world as we know it has changed drastically by
That's true.
And only in the span of a couple months. I think fighting games are going to be next on that list. There's going to be some big big changes. I think online is going to become more prevalent. I think online is going to improve as a result of this, and I expect to even see restrictions at locals. There's probably going to be caps on how many people can register if we, are able to have locals again. I imagine there's going to be, caps on where people are coming from. It might be, this is straight up just a regional local. Like if you're not from, Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, we may make an exception for New York or Maryland. If you're not really from those states, we're not expecting people to come out because every state is different right now.
That's fair too. Without a vaccine, I definitely see where you're coming from. You figure that the number that sticks out to me is back when EVO, I think it was 2019, had the Super Smash Bros. Ultimate Tournament. There were 3,000 people in that tournament alone. There's no way they could have the kind of tournaments they had then, at least not until there's a vaccine, or at least until we get this thing under control. So, I'm with you on that there could be caps, there could be social distancing and stuff like that. Luckily, you could set up the actual play areas so that you could have yourselves distanced. Like if you have those arcade machines that where you face each other.
Yeah, the heads.
Stuff like that. That would work. But I definitely see what you mean, what you're talking about there as far as caps and social distancing, stuff like that. But you know what? I would take that, a smaller tournament with those kind of restrictions in place, over no tournaments at all. Honestly, even if it just eases back into the way it used to be, if it can ever get back in there. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. I think doing things gradually and going small and being safe, that's going to be the most important part. So smaller tournaments I'm definitely, in favor of, just, when we're able to do so. But I think that's going to be the big thing. We're not going to be seeing these large-scale tournaments as we did in any large-scale tournament. It's going to be different. So, I'm excited to see where we can go from here, where we can grow from here. But, just doing so smartly and safely. I think we'll see things probably improve in 2021, hopefully. If we have locals again, but I think we're slowly getting to that point where we can start having those discussions and start planning. I don't think we're going to be back to where we used to be for quite some time.
No, I agree.
I don't even think we're going to have like our bigger majors until 2022 at the earliest.
I'm fine with that. I agree with you. Maybe some little like Evo regionals. You know what I mean? Like they have a whole new leadership. Well, not a whole new leadership, but the main guy is out, so now they can do whatever they want. If they wanted to do like an Evo Northeast, Evo Southeast, just to get their name back out there again, and then have the big one in 2022, I think that makes the most sense to me. But
they'd done Evo East back in the day, so it's definitely something they've had.
Right, for sure. But enough of that heavy stuff. Let's talk about some actual games. I know you play both retro games. In fact, the first time I ever met you, you were in a Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo tournament in 2018, which was great. And then you also play the newer stuff, like I believe Tekken and Under Night in Birth are your top two. Is that correct?
Kind of fell out of Under Night lately. Not necessarily because of any particular issues, just the netcode not being the strongest.
Sure.
I do have the Steam port, which fares a bit better. Same issue with Tekken. I've been playing Tekken, but there are netcode improvements coming. They did say there's going to be online updates coming in Season 4, so I'm very excited about that.
I'm very excited to see those too. Yeah,
I've actually played more. I've been playing more retro games, and then occasionally I've dipped my toe back into Street Fighter 5 more than anything because I got a new desktop back in January.
There you go.
I decided to treat myself.
There you go. Sure.
But there have been improvements to Fightcade 2 and using things that have rollback netcode. So I've gotten super heavy back into the retro games in addition to the newer stuff and kind of rediscovering those things that I used to play on GGPO back, and it was just me with a keyboard.
There you go.
As a kid messing around with emulators for the first time. So I've gotten back into the retro game kind of heavy. Haven't been entering as many online tournaments because I've been busy, but just playing and running sets with the homies, it's been amazing.
That's good stuff. Now, do you find a difference between training for a game like Tekken and Under Night versus an old retro game like that, or is it more of a 2D versus 3D thing?
I think it's more of, how I approach the training is different.
Sure.
If I'm playing something like a retro game, I know this is how it is. It's not changing. I'm
That's
doing
true.
this with the information that it's been like this for 20 years. You either deal with it or you don't. Like, that's pretty much it. So the way I would, prepare and practice for, something like Super Turbo or Alpha 2 or Vampire Savior that I've been heavy into, it's kind of just, rediscovering those elements that I kind of maybe forgot about, from being off the wagon for so long and not having offline, and kind of just playing to remember, hey, this is what this feels like. If you see this, do this. With the newer games, it's the same, but it's like there's more numbers involved with the newer games where I have to think of, okay, my punishes for this frame buffer are this, where my 5 frame is this, or my 10 frame is my jab, my 12 frame is this if I'm playing Tekken. The difference is really just there's a more focus on kind of like the numbers and the data in the newer games, where in the older games it felt more like feel. And there was definitely frame data and everything that we pay attention to here. But I think with the newer games, it definitely takes a lot of precedence because sometimes it can feel overwhelming. There's so many directions you can go,
Sure.
in your combo routes, to where you just try and make sure whatever it is you have is optimal. Or for me, if I can't do the max damage combo, if I can't do something optimal, what can I do that's consistent? Which is kind of that old school coming at me. I'm like, listen, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If you're not able to do the optimal stuff yet, do what you can, what you know is gonna hit.
Yeah, you know what? That would explain a lot as to why I'm really bad at recent fighting games, because I'm using it as purely feel, and I'm not putting the analytics into it. I've never thought of that. I'm going to have to take that back to the lab and see if I can't finally figure this stuff out.
Hey, labbing is lovely. That's how you
Labbing
figure
is
stuff
lovely.
out.
It's a good way to if you're stressed out and you just need an hour to cool off, just lab for an hour. Nothing like it. Now, you also mentioned before we got on here that you are part of a esports or competitive gaming camp run by the folks over at Nerd Street Gamers, friends of the show. I talked to Pete Powell a couple of times. So you're working on Overwatch specifically? Tell me a little more about that.
Yeah, so it's weird in the midst of COVID. It's kind of like I've found these new opportunities to do things with the games that I'd already been playing prior to COVID. Actually, back in February, when I was still working with the Police Athletic League. Shouts to Pal. I was a teacher there. I was teaching computer science basics to the kids, and something hit my supervisor's desk. They're like, there are these people at Nerd Street. I don't know what this is. It's some game called Overwatch. They want to teach the kids how to play and have like a community night. And I'm like, say no more, agree to it, handle whatever paperwork you got to handle. I'll take the point on this. I know what to do. And I'd run, stuff with academic engagement in gaming before. I did something like that when I was running when I was doing my internship at the Penn Museum. So this was right up my alley. The kids from the North Penn Pal Center came through that night. They played a couple of games. I was a point person from Pal. Puns and Buns, Christian Gillespie over at Nerd Street was our social media guy. He kind of took the lead on setting things up. We had the night the kids came out. They had fun. They got some swag. They got stuff from the Fusion, and then everybody left with tickets to come see the homestand game later on.
Yeah,
so
that's
they got
cool.
to see what esports was like in a live environment. Unfortunately, due to COVID, pandemic and everything, lost my job because Powell was not doing in-person stuff. The centers weren't open; they had to close. So I got laid off for a bit, and then an opportunity arose with Nerd Street. They reached out and say, "Hey, we're looking to run camps and do these things." They'd mentioned it to me before, but it was just one of those things. I'm like, I'm not sure how exactly I'm going to do this. But then they said, "Hey, like we're going to do these things online. We'd still love you to be part of it. Are you interested?" And then from June, I've been doing the Camp Loco stuff. So we take a group of kids. Usually, middle to high school students. We have a youth camp. We have a high school camp. We also have collegiate camps that we've been doing. But we kind of been, running the gamut here. There are people who are like 18, 19 who play collegiate Overwatch at levels. We've just been dealing with pretty much everybody, like from people who are new to Overwatch or new to PC. Any skill levels welcome, and we take them through competitive scenarios. We explain metas. We talk about, the different compositions. What's a dive comp? What's a brawl comp? What's double shield? How do you play it? How do these work? What are the pros and cons of each? Like, what's the macro level stuff? Like the big picture. What's the team play? And really, what's all we want to do in kind of being that esports pipeline and kind of trying to help represent the esports infrastructure is how do I improve as an individual to help my team improve as a team? What can I do to make the team better? And that's really just the philosophy we take whenever we're doing these camps, is to make sure the campers, first of all, they have fun. It's a safe environment. They're comfortable, but also they're learning more about themselves as well as learning the game. And I have had some amazing opportunities through this. I've been able to work with, just from June. June is when I started. I had my first camp that I ran with localhost, and I had a great group of students who still sign up for localhost stuff to this day. They still sign up for the Nerd Street Overwatch tournaments.
Cool.
Some of them signed up for future camps, but I've been able to work with other campers. We did a camp with the Philadelphia Fusion. Over the summer, we also had a camp with that Los Angeles Valiant that I was on, that I got to work with another coach that we had that was through Immortals. And then now we're actually in the midst of a camp, which is the reason why I'm up so early. I'm waking up 4 o'clock in the morning, dealing with British Standard Time, because we're working with the London Spitfire.
That's great.
We've got a camp called Flight School that they wanted to do, and they said, listen, the students are on reading week, and this is something we had talked about over the summer, but with the pandemic and everything going on, dates get pushed back, rosters get changed. It's after the playoffs, so a lot of teams are making off-season moves, and they said, we still want to do it, so we'll get whoever we get, we'll promote, we'll bring the students in, and so far they're loving it. We had a great day. First day today, up early, everybody came through, they played, they got to learn. And I could be doing anything. I could have small groups where each like 6 to 9 kids, to where now it's mainly quick play and we do VOD review and feedback. And I've had full camps where it's 24 and we've got 2 teams of 6 going at it, where I have 12 and I'm running a scrim, and another coach has another 12 and they're running scrims between the campers and doing like tournament style matches, and all this stuff. So it's been great.
That sounds awesome, and the fact that you get to now interact with people, not just local kids. You're talking to people over across the pond there. That's some good stuff, man. I really, really dig where Nerd Street's going as far as esports is concerned, and these camps sound great. I'll have to learn a little more about them in the future. Thank you for tipping me off on that. I knew they were doing it, but I didn't realize just how deep it was getting into the games of Overwatch. Now, could you see them doing camps on other types of games? Like a fighting game camp is what comes to my mind, but there's also Call of Duty, Call of Duty, League of Legends, all these big esports games. Do you see them expanding their camp portfolio in the future?
Oh, they already have. I'm one of the coaches that they have for Overwatch. We've got multiple coaches for Overwatch. I work with, an absolutely cracked team. That's kind of scrim lingo for, being up there, just being great. I work with an absolutely, crack shot team of, men, women, and individuals who have just been absolutely fantastic throughout this. We've got Overwatch. We've got League of Legends. We've got a Fortnite camp. We've got a Rocket League camp. We've got Valorant. All of these different games that we have going on right now. There's already a team. My Discord's going off because I forgot to turn the notifications off. There's another camp. There's another camp that's actually meeting today. And I think they're going through their Rocket League. And then we've got Fortnite on the weekends. Then we've just kind of got like so many different games running, so many different coaches, so many different things that they've reached out and they've got kind of like a hand in every pot, but they're making sure everything, gets the attention that it needs. The coaches are great, the staff's great. They're making some waves, man. It's been a crazy experience. That first camp I did that first week, and they're like, yo, you did such a great job with this. Hey, in 2 weeks you got the Fusion. I'm like, I got what?
Yeah, there you go. That's awesome. That's awesome.
It's been a fast track.
Man.
They're moving.
Keep that stuff up. I want to hear more about that, more about these camps in the future, because I imagine this is not the last time we will be speaking on this show, my friend. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Jumaani Haskins. But again, if you're playing against him, you know him as Maestro. Maestro, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me, everybody. Stay safe out there, stay lovely, and please look out for each other.
Thanks, brother. See ya. Yes, there he is, Maestro Jumaani Haskins. Very happy to have him join me on the podcast today. He was the first ever interview I ever did when I started writing about esports for Twin Galaxies back in 2018. The job that got me where I am right now. From there to Hollywood Reporter to here. Would not be here if not for Twin Galaxies, and would not have done there if it wasn't for my Winter Brawl piece that year, where Jumaani was one of the first to speak to me. So I appreciate him very much. Always like talking to him about video fighting games in particular. And he's a very smart kid, really knows what's up. And I'm very much looking forward to getting back into the scene once all this COVID nonsense goes away. But moving on now to what you can expect to play this week. We're almost at new consoles, but we're not quite there yet. Doesn't mean there's nothing for you to try out right now. Take out your glasses. Let's see what's on tap. Watch Dogs Legion is the big release this week, technically releasing yesterday, the 29th of October, or 2 days ago if you're listening on the radio on Saturday. Recruit anyone you want to take down an oppressive regime that has invaded London and turned it into a police state. If you want my expanded thoughts, I reviewed this game over at MMORPG.com. Check that out. Also, Pikmin 3 Deluxe, expanded port of Pikmin 3 from the Wii U to the Nintendo Switch, is coming to the Switch on the 30th. That's today, if you're listening when the podcast goes down. Yesterday, if you're listening on the radio. I loved Pikmin 3 on the Wii U. I expect to really love it on the Switch. That is definitely one that should be in your crosshairs if you own Nintendo's console. 2 big games. You've got your choice. What's on tap for you? All right, folks, yes, that is what is on tap for the week. Watch Dogs Legion, the big one's coming. You can read my review of Watch Dogs Legions over at MMORPG.com. That went live on Wednesday, and it's good. I enjoyed it. The ability to recruit anybody that you see is very, very cool. It's not perfect, obviously, but they made a dang good game and a heck of a story. So if you're a Watch Dogs fan, you will not be disappointed. And if you want some hacking-based espionage in your life, Watch Dog Legions would be a good option. But now it is time for our second segment of the week. And as I have talked about many times on this podcast, at the end of the most recent episodes, I am participating in a charity event called Extra Life. Their game day is November 7th, and I will be playing video games for 24 hours from 8 a.m. the 7th to 8 a.m. the 8th to raise money for Children's Miracle Network. I am specifically running for Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. And with me is a fellow member of the Extra Life Philadelphia Facebook group, hailing from Percy, Pennsylvania, who will also be participating in Extra Life next year. He's also a video game composer, so we'll definitely be talking about that. And his name is Nathan Gulla. Nate, how are you?
Doing very well. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you for joining me tonight. I appreciate you answering the call when I put out the Extra Life, the Facebook post in the Extra Life Philadelphia page. So this is you were talking to me before the show. This is your 8th year participating in the charity event. Walk me through some of the things you have done in years past to raise money for the kids.
Yeah, sure. So, very happy to be here. I saw your post and was like, this is very relevant to my interests. So I thought I'd give you a response there. And but yeah, I've had a decently large group almost every year. And we've sort of continued to evolve our process through the years. Like, the first couple years, we would either be in someone's like shed or garage or something. I actually wired my garage at the time. It was like a 3-bay garage. It was pretty big. And I put a bunch of plugs out there. We had like 80 total amps available, so there was like no chance of power failure and everything. And, so that was awesome.
I love that. It sounds like utopia.
It worked very well, although it was a little cold. But
oh yeah, I guess that makes
other
sense.
than that, but then a couple friends who all worked at the same place were able to book a large room there, and so we'd have like 25 people, able to use their facilities, which was awesome. So that was sort of like the summit of our Extra Life achievements. So yeah, just kept kind of getting better every year. This year is obviously going to be a little bit different, though.
So the cool thing about Extra Life is, while the actual game day for the Extra Life charity is November the 7th, and it's when most people play their marathon, you are able to play whenever you want. You can even do multiple marathons a year if you so choose. I remember one year I had a wedding on the actual game day, so I had to shift mine a week behind. You were doing something similar this year, where your group of guys, the actual game day is not working, so you're looking for something in December, correct?
Yeah, so this is the first time, actually, that I will not be participating on the nationwide game day on November 7th.
Oh, wow, in your whole 8 years.
Yeah, I've always managed to make it work, but yeah, this time, just with COVID, and the group of friends that I'm usually with is sort of splitting into some smaller sort of satellite groups, so, if we have like 5 guys in a room at this point, it's probably going to be the most, at a time, although we can still play remotely, of course.
Adulthood stinks, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because you're like me.
Stinks, COVID stinks.
Yeah, everything. Yeah, it is a tough year for that. I didn't even think of COVID, because the last couple of years that I've done it alone, just because I've had kids or my friends have had kids. We just haven't been able to get together and do the whole marathon. First
does
couple
make
of years,
it more complicated.
yeah, for sure. And I didn't even think of the pandemic in this regard. I think about it in everything else. I did not think about it here, which really, that's bizarre. So, do you have? So, I guess it would depend on how many people you're going to have in your group this year. But do you have games that you play every year, or do you have certain things that you do that are like traditions as part of your annual marathon?
Yeah, so most years there's usually some sort of like story-based game that with like parties that will play and sort of divide into groups and do that. And there's kind of a wide area of interest. Some guys are just very into single-player games, but they just kind of like hanging out and playing with everyone at the same time.
Sure.
But in previous years, I know like when Borderlands 2 came out and Borderlands the pre-sequel, like we would have like groups of 4, team up and do that. One year it was Grim Dawn. We're very into sort of those Diablo clone type of games.
Oh, cool.
Grim Dawn was one. Path of Exile was one of those. I feel like this year is likely to be Baldur's Gate 3.
Okay, yep, that's a good choice.
Yeah. So a couple of guys that I hang with are already in the early access portion. I have not spilled, to get that yet, but I do want to. Baldur's Gate 2 is pretty influential for me a while ago, so
Sure.
Definitely love the series.
Sure. And honestly, the whole early access thing, I can usually get behind that, but paying $60 full price for a game that's still in early access, I don't know why it just does not sit well with me.
I hear that too. Yeah, the $60 I still have a hard time with, just in general, almost.
That's true.
So yeah, but sometimes if it's for Extra Life, I'll usually spend the extra cash for that.
Yeah, that's fair. Now, will you be streaming this at all, or will you or your friends be streaming, or is this more of like a private party sort of thing?
I have started streaming over the past couple of years, and I don't really have an active channel. As with you, having 2 young kids, it's just I wouldn't be able to maintain like a consistent schedule.
Nope, not with a full-time job, that's for sure.
Yeah, full-time job, kids, other career aspirations and everything. It's just not happening right now. But I will be streaming. My Twitch handle is Gatorius, which is spelled Gaitorius. So, if you feel free to look that up, check it out.
I will. I certainly will. Now, now, as we were talking about in the intro, you also do some video game composition and some music writing for indie games. You were telling me about The Specimen by Hyperdigital. I had that right? Hyperdigital?
Hyper Galaxy.
Hyper Galaxy. Hyperdigital. Where the hell did I get that?
That's all right.
They're very mad at me right now. So Hyper Galaxy's The Specimen, which is out now or coming soon?
It is coming soon. The last I heard from the guys, they were doing a massive update on their engine, so I've had a little bit of a break, but should be getting back to it before the year is up. So I've got several pieces that are basically finished, and they're continuing to just polish things on their end as well. So it's very exciting. It's it feels a little bit like Mega Man meets like Metroid almost, and sort of this side scroller platformer, but you're shooting things, but going through like trying to dodge and just stay alive. So it's very interesting. And there's an evolutionary portion to it as well. You start out as sort of like this little zergling thing, and you eventually evolve into this more complex being, almost like a Mewtwo or something.
Interesting.
So,
cool.
Yeah, it's very neat.
So walk me through the composition process. What do they give you that then inspires you or helps you figure out the kind of music you're going to be writing? Do they give you a like a scene by scene? Do they give you the breakdown of the story? Do they show you gameplay of certain scenes and you compose off that? How does that work?
Yeah, so for this game, my forte most of the time is in like epic orchestral sort of music. Sort of. I like to really tell a story with the way that I write, and I don't really do. It of course depends on what the game is calling for, but I try to be pretty melodic and keep things interesting. Of course, there's also sort of a level of appropriateness you need to maintain. Like you don't want it to get in the way of the action, but
Sure.
I try to sort of keep things as interesting as possible. The guys at Hyper Galaxy wanted especially sort of like synth sort of sounds and some more like sort of futuristic sound sets going on.
Spacey.
So, yeah.
Okay.
And they're big fans of actually Metroid and like Mass Effect like
Sure.
series and everything. So I was able to sort of like think, okay, what goes on in those? How does the composer handle that? And I decided on sort of a hybrid style. So I use synths as sort of the main voice and melodic content, and I use sort of an orchestral backing. So I get a little bit of my epic orchestral in there, but I also am trying to keep it, appropriate to the space theme. And they've given me sort of a work in progress game where I actually am able to play a level and sort of get an idea of, like, what do I feel like this should sound like? Kind of go from there.
That's very cool. See, I've always been fascinated by musical composition, especially in video games. Honestly, when I first started writing back in 2009, one of the first things I ever had was a column just on game music called Listen Up, back for GamerNode.com.
Oh, that's awesome.
I used to I find it fascinating the way that some games use music and their soundtracks to shape a scene or really add more impact. Mass Effect is a great example. Having like the example I like to use is having in the first Mass Effect, that song Vigil is the song that you hear at the main menu, and then you don't hear it again until towards the end of the game when you meet that AI who basically is an exposition dump and explains what the Reapers are. But there's that song again. And then, so okay, this is obviously important. If they wanted me to hear this song in the beginning, they're giving it to me again. You know what I mean? That kind of cue, I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it does. Mass Effect is such a great example too of talk about story driven. So
that's true.
And yeah, you definitely kind of know like when that theme comes around, it's an important moment.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the best soundtracks ever created. Jack Wall and Sam Hulick, I believe, did a fantastic job on it. And I hopefully one of these years, I'll be talking about Nate Gulla and his Nate Gulla, and his excellent soundtrack.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm going to leave you with this just to review what we were talking about here, so they can find you. When you are streaming on Twitch, are you streaming games? Or are you streaming while you're playing your music? Both, a little bit each.
So far, it's just been for gaming, and pretty much the only time I've run my stream is for Extra Life.
Okay.
So, but I have intentions, I guess, of doing some musical stuff. I have several piano collections and do some of my own arrangements as well of video game music, and would be very interested to put that on either Twitch or maybe YouTube Live or something. For now, I'm trying to get a couple of videos on YouTube of some video game stuff that I've done. Just last week, I put up a Neverwinter Nights 2 video.
Cool.
Of me doing solo piano. But yeah, so that's sort of something. Again, I think with everything going on, might be a future project to do a regular stream.
Sure. Yeah. Once the kids are a little more self-sufficient.
Right.
That's
exactly.
basically what's keeping me from having my stream regular too. But Nate, I do want to thank you very much for, like I said, answering the call and coming on to the show today. Extra Life, if you want to donate to your cause, it's extra-life facebook.org/participant/Nate-Gulla, or do you have a team name?
Let me actually check that real quick.
See if I can
I'm
find
logging
it
on
too.
right now.
Look,
So,
live radio, people. Live
Yeah.
radio. We're just we're doing things on the fly here.
it is. I thought I changed my page name to better reflect or just be easier to find, but it's kind of a long address, so I don't know if that'll work well on radio.
Hold up a second. Breaking news into our little interview here. You're going to go this entire interview and not mention that you were on the Materia Collective?
That is another thing I should maybe talk about.
For those who don't know, the Materia Collective is a group of people who came together and orchestrated or rearranged Final Fantasy music. They've done one for 7, 8, 9, 10, all of the core. And it looks like, based on these credits, you were on Final Fantasy 10 and 9's albums, if not more. So, how was that experience to have your piano skills so recognized that you were included in these excellent compilations?
It's a really great experience to be a part of their albums and their creation process. And once again, I mean, in my experience, and actually the Final Fantasy 9 and 10 albums are so far the only two that I've done. Just too many irons in the fire, as it were. But I got to work with another composer and performer who actually I went to college with, Laura Entravia. I don't know if you have heard of her, but she's performed with Video Games Live, and she's currently in a band called Disco Cactus, and they're amazing.
It's a fantastic name.
So we did a piano and flute duet for Final Fantasy X, and I did like a theme and variations. And for the 9 album, which was actually came out later, I kind of did a lot of instrumentation myself. I did piano, accordion, bass, melodica, and my orchestral samples. And I had my brother-in-law do a trumpet quartet.
Look at this guy. Look at this
my
guy,
wife,
arranging some of the best music ever written and almost didn't even mention it without me signing off. Come on now.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry. I got a little caught up, I guess. But,
I understand. Technically, you were here to talk about Extra Life, but as soon as I saw that, I had to ask you about it because, man, if that were me, anytime I would be talking about video game music, I would be like the Kool-Aid man, just burst through the room. Hey, I was on Materia Collective. Did you know that? But no, I now have listening homework as soon as we're done here. In fact, when we were done recording this, I was going to ask you what kind of music you wanted me to play in your intro. I like to put music as I'm introducing people. Now I don't have to ask you. I'll just take one of the things that you use for Materia Collective. One of your pieces there, so we can hear it. In fact, I'll probably play it right now, right underneath this. The piano you hear right this second is Nate. Go check him out on the Materia Collective, Final Fantasy X and Final Fantasy IX. But Nate, I will let you go now for real this time. If you go to extra-life.org and search Nathan Gulla, Gulla, he will appear. He is part of a team called the Swedes, if that's easier to search for, SWEDES, if you want to donate to his cause. My cause is there as well, as I've been talking about, and I will update again at the end of the show. Nate, thank you so very much for your time. I really do appreciate it. And good luck on your marathon this year. I wish you the best, pal.
Thanks so much, and you as well.
There he is. That is Nathan Gulla from Percy, PA, talking to me about Extra Life and his video game music exploits. Way to not mention that you were part of one of the biggest Final Fantasy arrangement albums ever made, my man. That's some great stuff. If you have a chance to check out the Materia Collective, check out his work. It's all very, very good. Quick update on Extra Life before we move on to the speed run. My campaign currently sits at $850 of the goal of $1226, and we have until November the 7th. So we are reaching the last week where we can get that goal. And if I get it before Saturday, as I've said, I will don the PSVR headset and I will put myself in VR Resident Evil 7 for at least 1 hour, and a grown man will probably cry on stream on Twitch for all to see. as I do that. That is what I am willing to do if the goal is reached. So if you can find it in your heart to donate anything from $1 to whatever floats your boat, please do so at my Extra Life page, which I will put in the information of this podcast, as well as say right now, that is extra-life.org/participant/Jason-Fanelli. And I tweet that link out every couple of days. I'll probably tweet it out once a week between now and then as well. So definitely donate to the cause if you can. It is a great one. Moving on now to the speed run, and I figure for the first part of the speed run tonight, it's Halloween, so let's get spooky. Let's talk about horror games. Maybe you're sitting inside this Halloween because of COVID. You don't have any parties to go to, so you're thinking about sitting in, turning the lights off, and trying to play something spooky. Well, I have some recommendations for you. First, obviously, is the Resident Evil series. Resident Evil, you cannot go wrong with Capcom's landmark survival horror franchise. The first couple of games, if you go back to the actual PS1 versions, will have just as much horror as it will campy dialogue and unintended laughter. Like, you were almost a Jill sandwich. The iconic Barry Burton with that line. Plus the other lines that are a part of that very first one. But if you really want to get creeped out, if you really want to put yourself out there and turn off the lights and get scared, Resident Evil 2 Remake, Resident Evil 3 Remake, or Resident Evil 7, as I mentioned with Extra Life, is the way to go. Resident Evil 7 being completely in first person puts you at eye level with all of the monstrosities you see in front of you, so there's that extra bit of scare there. And then Resident Evils 2 and 3 Remake, or remakes of two of the best games of all time. Resident Evil 2, a huge game. Even the remake was huge. Resident Evil 3 has Nemesis, the iconic villain of the Resident Evil franchise. So you really can't go wrong with any of those games if you're looking for some spooky fun this Saturday night. If you want to go back a little more old school, something a little more psychological, something a little more makes your skin crawl as opposed to jumps out and scares you, that's Silent Hill. Silent Hill is another landmark gaming horror franchise, one that you might not see as much around anymore, thank you to Konami deciding they don't want to publish games anymore, just pachinko machines and whatever else they're doing. The first one is the best one. The first one, lays the groundwork well. The second one is the best one, if you ask me. Then it kind of goes off the rails for a little bit. 3 is weird. 4 comes back a little bit, and then there's Homecoming and Shattered Memories, and it just gets weird. So stick to Silent Hill 2 if you can, or the first one if you want to see how everything started. If you do play Silent Hill 1, I recommend you go for the UFO ending. That one's just fun. Same with the Shiba Inu ending, the dog ending in Silent Hill. I believe that is 2, could be 3. I could be wrong there. But Silent Hill, another great choice for your horror-themed gaming party. If you're looking for something a little bit newer, there's a game that came out actually just last week called it's actually a sequel to the amazing Amnesia Dark Descent, and that is Amnesia Rebirth. The character is stranded after a plane crash in the desert, or at least in a desert-looking setting, and they have to survive with all the horrors. It's a harrowing journey through desolation and despair, exploring the limits of human resilience, as per the official description on the Steam description page. Looks like it's got a 75% of the user reviews for the game on Steam. That's pretty good, and it only costs $30. So if you're looking for a new game to scare the pants off you, Amnesia Rebirth, probably a good idea. If you're looking for something newer, but not quite that new, I recommend Outlast. Now, Outlast, made by developer Red Barrels, this game is scarier than it has any right to be. It's an indie horror game self-published by the company that makes it. First-person survival horror where you have no weapons, you're playing as a freelance journalist where all he has is a camera, and you're in an insane asylum where the inmates run the asylum, and it's just damn scary. You're hiding in a locker, and this big monster looks his eyes in to see if you're in there. It's just, oh man, I get chills just thinking about it. I played that game by accident at a PAX East 2013. They just said, hey, come try this game. And then I did, and then I regretted it because I probably look like a big old softy. I don't do horror well. So that one, definitely on the list. The first one, awesome. Whistleblower DLC will make you cringe out of your skin with the villain that follows you through that game. And the sequel is good. Not as good, I've been told. Outlast is the best one The first Outlast is the best one of the bunch as we sit right now. And then finally, this is one that I would like to throw in there. Now, again, I don't do horror well, but this one is fascinating for all the hidden lore that you can find in it. It is a far-reaching series, having going back to 2014 with multiple games. The newest one just recently previewed for PlayStation 5, and that is Five Nights at Freddy's. Now, you may have seen this, and you're saying to me, this is just a jump scare factory. How could you possibly endorse this game? But seriously, play it for a little bit. Pay attention to your surroundings. Look at the things that you see on the walls, the newspapers, the little story bits, the guy talking to you on the phone. And then play the sequels. Play 2, play 3, play 4, and you'll see how this story keeps expanding and getting to a point where then you're realizing, holy crap, this is very interesting. Way more interesting than the initial gameplay would have me believe. This is Hidden Lore City, and I'm all about it. In fact, if you're an Xbox owner, Five Nights at Freddy's 1, 2, 3, and 4 are now available for free on Xbox Game Pass. If you subscribe to Game Pass, you can get the first 4 Five Nights at Freddy's for free. So I would definitely recommend that if you're looking for cheap, spooky fun at your Halloween party, because if you subscribe to Game Pass, you already get the 4 of them. Don't see anything wrong with that. But those are my 5 recommendations. I, of course, missed a lot. There's a lot of horror games to talk about. The Dead Space series is up there. Until Dawn is good if you want to play a teen slasher film in video game form. Soma will blow your mind if you get to the end of it. Alien Isolation, with the giant alien stalking you throughout the ship. That's another one to consider. Evil Within. The list goes on. Lots of horror games to check out. Just gave you a couple of recommendations here. Play what you want. Play to your heart's content. And I hope that you have a scary, spooky Halloween this weekend, whether you're able to make it with a couple of friends or you're sitting home alone, avoiding the scariness of the outside world at the moment, and eating all the candy yourself. I don't judge. Eat all that candy. Unless it's Reese Cups. I want one. Otherwise, eat it. Go for it. That's part 1 of the speed run tonight, and part 2 is something that I would like to talk about that we talked about on the radio with Sean Brace. I join him every Thursday at 4 o'clock on the radio station, and that is that the PlayStation 2 turned 20 years old this week. Unbelievable to imagine that the PlayStation 2, one of the systems that was a key in my high school gaming and college gaming situation, is 20 years old in America. October 26, 2000 was the official release date, and it just makes me sad because I'm getting old. If it's getting old, I'm getting old too. But the PlayStation 2 was obviously one of the greatest consoles ever made, and there are many people with many fond memories of this game. As I mentioned on the radio with Sean, is the highest selling console of all time at 155 million units. And with that means there's a lot of games to talk about that were on the console. Now, I started playing a lot of fighting games. So Capcom Fighting Evolution, which was like a inter-Capcom fighting game with Darkstalkers and Street Fighter and stuff like that. I moved on to Final Fantasy X. Final Fantasy X is one of the greatest games I've ever played, and it will always be that way. From the epic story, to the awesome combat with the overdrives, to the Blitzball in-game mechanic, which is basically like a weird soccer volleyball mashup, but everybody's playing in a sphere full of water. Very hard to explain to a non-gamer, but for anyone who played Final Fantasy X, you know that game was amazing. To the soundtrack, which might be one of the best, if not the best soundtracks in Final Fantasy history, to Xanarkin, the piano theme that you're probably hearing right now, or just heard. I imagine that's what I'll put under this in post-edit, is one of the most gorgeous pieces of music ever, let alone in a video game. Can't emphasize that enough. Look up To Xanarkand after this podcast if you like what you heard a little while ago. And then there's Kingdom Hearts. Kingdom Hearts started on the PlayStation 2. Kingdom Hearts is obviously one of the biggest franchises in the world right now. Only has 3 core games, but there were so many freaking spin-offs that we've been playing Kingdom Hearts ever since 2001. With some of the weirdest names you've ever seen in a game. So like the 3DS version was Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance 3D. Get it? Ha! But no. The first one and the second one are the pinnacle of the older Kingdom Hearts games. Those 2 games were in my PlayStation for a very long time. In fact, I remember leaving class early, sorry, Mom, in college to take the Broad Street line from my dorm at Temple Towers, all the way down to South Street, where I had pre-ordered Kingdom Hearts 2 at the EB Games on South Street. Buddy of mine went, picked it up, brought it back, and that's what we did the rest of the night. I had another chapter of my PlayStation 2 career, let's call it, is one that you might not expect from me, just because of, the size of me. And that's Dance Dance Revolution. I was a huge DDR fan back in the day. Wildwood Boardwalk, I used to cut that thing up. Me and my sister, believe it or not, my younger sister was better than me at Dance Dance Revolution. And then the home versions came out, and they had the mats that were just basically like flat little mat, like yoga mats you'd put on the ground that you would stomp on to get all the arrows, and they would hurt your feet because you're basically just stomping on the concrete underneath your feet, and the mats were flat. It was not great for my shins, but not great for my knees, but man, was it fun, and a workout. I would love one of these days to get back into Dance Dance Revolution, get off my butt and play some of that. Those games were out of sight. But the list goes on and on of all the games that were on PlayStation 2. The Dragon Ball Z, Budokai series, God of War started on the PlayStation 2. Katamari Damacy for you, for those who like a weird game. That's a weird puzzle game where you're rolling a ball. Max Payne was on PS2. Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3. Metal Gear Solid 3 being one of my favorite games of all time. Started on PlayStation 2. And I could be here all day talking about PlayStation 2 games. What an amazing console. What an amazing piece of technology. And really set a groundwork for where we are right now with PlayStation 5 on the horizon in 10 short days based on when I'm recording this right now. So with that is the end of episode 20 of the Cheesesteaks and Controllers podcast. I am Esports and Gaming Insider Jason Fanelli for Fox PHL The Gambler, 102.5 FM, 1480 AM, and iHeart Radio here in Philadelphia. Next up on the docket is Liberty Line Radio, bringing you the best in sports news. Victor Williams and the crew going to talk to you a little while on this Saturday afternoon. I want to apologize in advance because of my 2 interviews. I have a feeling I'm going a little long, so if you're hearing this right now, I'm sorry. We'll get to Liberty Line shortly. I'll stop talking your ear off. For the Cheesesteaks and Controllers podcast, I am Jason Fanelli. Talk to you next week when the podcast turns 21. Beers all around. See you.